So that was cartilage. Now, let's talk about bone. Bone is a supporting connective tissue, so it is composed of cells, fibers, and ground substance. It contains four types of cells that we have to learn about. Osteoprogenitor cells, which are the stem cells in bone, osteoblasts, osteocytes, and osteoclasts. Osteo, as you may have guessed, means bone. Osteoprogenitor cells are stem cells that divide and produce daughter cells. The daughter cells differentiate into osteoblasts. Osteoprogenitor cells can be thought of as parents. Actually, what happens is that the osteoprogenitor cell divides, and one cell remains an osteoprogenitor cell, and the other cell is considered the daughter cell, and that's the cell that differentiates and becomes an osteoblast. Osteoblasts. So, osteoblasts are cells that secrete osteoid. Osteoid is a mix of collagen fibers, ground substance, and enzymes that are needed to form calcium crystals. More on that later. Um, Osteoblasts secrete osteoid in response to hormonal stimuli or mechanical stimuli. To help you remember that osteoblasts build bone, you can think of the fact that osteoblasts have a B in them, and so does building bone. Osteoblasts are found in a single layer on the inner and the outer surfaces of a bone. As an osteoblast becomes surrounded by the extracellular matrix that it produces, it differentiates into an osteocyte. And osteocytes reside in lacunae or little pools, just like chondrocytes do. Osteocytes maintain the extracellular matrix, the collagen fibers, and the ground substance of bone. Just briefly, before I talk more about osteocytes, bones exchange calcium and phosphate with the blood as needed. So if calcium and phosphate are needed anywhere in the body, calcium and phosphate will be taken from the bones, put into the blood, and then carried by the blood to wherever they are needed. This exchange requires that the bones be remodeled, which means that the bones be broken down if calcium and phosphate are needed. On the other hand, if calcium and phosphate levels in the blood are too high, then calcium and phosphate are put into bone. Bone is built up, and calcium and phosphate are put into the bone, and the bone stores the calcium and the phosphate. Bone remodeling also occurs in response to changing levels of mechanical stress on bone. And we'll talk more about that in a couple of slides. Osteocytes monitor calcium and phosphate in the bone and in blood, and also monitor stresses on bones. Osteocytes then coordinate bone remodeling when it is needed for any reason. Osteocytes are connected to other osteocytes by cellular extensions that pass from one lacunae to another through caniculi, which are small canals. When the cellular extensions come into contact with each other within these tiny canals, they are connected by gap junctions, channels between the cells. The junctions allow the delivery of nutrients to osteocytes that are not close to the blood vessels in the bone. So we'll see that it's a bit of a problem getting blood flow with oxygen and nutrients to osteocytes within bone because, of course, bone is a sort of hard, rigid substance. So this helps to solve that problem by having an osteocyte that's perhaps right next to a blood vessel communicate with an osteocyte that's a little farther from the blood vessel, but whatever oxygen and nutrients are taken up by the closer osteocyte can be shared with the farther osteocyte. Osteoclasts are giant multinucleated cells. Unlike osteoblasts and osteocytes, which differentiate from osteoprogenitor cells, osteoclasts differentiate from stem cells of the immune system. Osteoclasts are found in a single layer on the inner and the outer surfaces of bone, and the actions of osteoclasts are important in bone remodeling. Osteoclasts secrete enzymes and acids that dissolve collagen fibers and calcium crystals, respectively. On the surface of the osteoclast that sits on the surface of the bone, there is a ruffled border that consists of many projections of the cell membrane. The ruffled border increases the surface area of the osteoclast for secretion of the enzymes and the acids. And you see here in the central slide, there's an amazing electron microscope picture of a huge osteoclast breaking down the surface of bone. And as it broke down the bone, it would be releasing calcium and phosphate into blood. And then the blood would carry the calcium and the phosphate to the areas of the body where they were needed. You can remember that osteoclasts have a C, and you can think of them crushing the extracellular matrix. So osteoclasts crush the extracellular matrix. So putting it together, bone remodeling is a continual process of building up and breaking down bone. Osteoblasts build the bone, and osteoclasts crush the bone. Osteoblasts put calcium and phosphate into bone, and osteoclasts take calcium and phosphate and release it from bone. Both cells are continually responding to the internal needs of the body and external stresses on the bone. So minor bone remodeling is making minor changes in the amounts of minerals like calcium and phosphate in the bone continually, like on a minute-to-minute basis as we live. The core of the femur, for example, is slowly built up and broken down 2 to 3 times a year. More extensive bone remodeling can occur in response to a mechanical stress on the bone, and this bone remodeling can change the shape of bones. If a person lifts weights, osteoblasts will make more extracellular matrix at the site where the tendon of the stressed muscle attaches to the bone. Okay, this is very important. Actually, there was several cases where people were taking testosterone of the type that people take, like anabolic steroids, testosterone, in order to build up their muscles because they were competing in some kind of sport. And their muscles were growing in leaps and bounds, but their bones and the extracellular matrix that should have been building up where the tendon of these newer, huger muscles were attached to the bone was not keeping pace with the growth of the muscles. So the large muscles were tearing off of the bones because not enough extracellular matrix had been laid down where the tendon of the muscle was attaching to the bone. So that was just one of the reasons that they were trying to discourage people from taking testosterone. If a person is inactive, their bones will become thin and brittle. Regular exercise is actually needed to maintain strong bones. Right now, it is recommended that everybody do weight-bearing exercise of some kind. And also, in particular, lift weights. Okay. If a bone breaks, it is repaired, and it's actually made stronger where the bone broke. If a person has braces on their teeth, osteoclasts will break down the bone and osteoblasts will make new bone in the tooth sockets as the positions of the teeth change. So if you had braces, did you know that was happening? Okay,